Alright guys, we're picking up with video number 2 from section 2.4, and we're going to talk about standard form for the equation of a line. And let me tell you, first I'm going to start out giving you the formula for standard form, and then we're going to talk about some different parts and how some textbooks are pickier than others. Sometimes it's just a matter of the directions, sometimes it's the rule they want you to use. So, standard form is AX plus BY equals C. And basically all that means is you have to get X and Y on the same side of the equation. A and B are just the coefficients for X and Y. C is your constant. It's the number that doesn't have a variable. It's just over there all by itself. So now, your book says for standard form all you have to do is make it look like this. There are other books that I've taught out of that in order for it to be in standard form, you had to have it like this. This one had to be positive, and it could not be a fraction. Okay? So your book doesn't go that far as the rule. However, they are a little bit picky in their instructions for each problem. So let's take a look at problem 3 and see if I can help you understand the directions. And it's important to make sure you read the directions every time. Alright, so problem number 3, they want me to rewrite this in standard form. So remember, we've got to start out by getting X and Y on the same side. So I want to take this X and move it over here with the Y. To do that, I'm going to subtract 3/4 X from both sides. And then I've got to make sure I put it in the correct order. Put your X and its coefficient first. Your Y is positive, so it's plus Y. And all that's left on this side is a -5. So as far as your textbook is concerned, standard form looks like this. But sometimes they will give you directions that says they want it in standard form with integer coefficients. And remember, integer coefficients means positive and negative whole numbers. So this means no fractions, no decimals. So what I've got to do is then take this and get rid of my fractions. So I'm going to come back over here and finish working. To get rid of the fractions in any equation, if you'll just look at the denominator of a fraction, this one has a 4 on the bottom, and you can multiply every single term in the whole problem by that denominator and your fractions will go away. So when I multiply here, this is technically 4 over 1, so that gives me -12 over 4, so that's -3. X. 4 times Y is a positive 4Y, and -5 times 4 is -20. So standard form with integer coefficients is -3x plus 4y equals -20. So how do you know which one they want? Read the directions. Okay, and as far as Math Excel is concerned, my experience with it will always accept this answer, even if it just asks for plain old standard form, because this is standard form. It just happens to have integer coefficients, so it is equivalent, and it will accept it. But if they ask for integer coefficients, and you answer it this way, it will not accept it. Okay. The nice thing about Math Excel, you've got 3 chances at it. So if you type one in and then realize you've typed it incorrectly or you didn't read the directions correctly, you've got 2 more chances to go back and get it. All right, next we're going to talk about X and Y intercepts. Okay, Okay, and we briefly talked about x and y intercepts in the last section, I believe. So x and y intercepts, that's just where the graph touches the x and y axis. So now, in the last section, we talked about an x-intercept is always going to be some number, comma, 0. And this number right here, that's where it touches the x-axis. We also talked about the y-intercept is always 0, comma, a number. And this number right here is where your graph touches the y-axis. So now, we're going to use this concept right here to make a table in problem 4. Okay? So when I say use this information to make a table, well, here's my XY table, or my XY chart. Okay? So remember, x-intercept, I have a 0 for y. So if I put a 0 here, I'll be able to plug it in, get a number for x, and that will be my x-intercept. Then here, I've got 0 for x, plug that in, solve for y, I'll get a number for y, which will be my y-intercept. Okay? So every time they ask me to graph using x and y intercepts, I always make a table that looks just like this. I have a 0 in the y column and a 0 in the x column. So in problem 4, we're going to start here. What are the intercepts of 3x plus 5y equals 15? And then they want me to graph it. So I'm going to make my XY chart, put a 0 here and a 0 here. So if I'm plugging in 0 for y, that's going to make it 3x plus 5 times 0 equals 15. Well, that's just 0. So I'm left over here with 3x equals 15. That means x is equal to 5. So now here I have 0 for x. So I'm going to plug that in. I will have 3 times 0 plus 5y equals 15. Well, 3 times 0 is 0. All I have left is 5y equals 15. And therefore y equals 3. Now I can plot those two ordered pairs and graph my line. So 5, 0, go over 5, up 0. There's my x-intercept. 0, 3, go over 0 and up 3. There is my y-intercept. And yeah, I've only got 2 points this time, but that's, all you're going to get with an x and y-intercept. So just be careful, line it up. There is your line. All right, one more extra example, and then we'll end this video and go to video 3 for parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, for this problem, it says find the intercepts of y minus 2 equals 4 times x minus 10. So now, this one is a little bit more difficult as far as plugging in your zeros for your x and your y. What I recommend you do for this one is first put it in standard form. Okay, if we go back up and look at the previous example, this was standard form. And standard form and x and y intercepts work real well. It's super easy. This that we have down here at the bottom is not standard form. That is point slope form. And that's not real easy to work with and find the intercepts. So we're going to change it to standard form. So the first thing I'm going to do is distribute my 4. So I've got y minus 2 equals 4x minus 40. Then I have to get my x and y on the same side. So go ahead and subtract your 4x. Put those in the correct order. I've still got a minus 2 there. And now to finish getting it in standard form, I need to take this 2, which is a constant, and move it over here with the negative 40. So add 2, and I get negative 4x plus y is negative 38. So after we get it in standard form, then we're going to make a chart and find the intercepts. So here's my chart, x and y. And remember, I just do a 0 in each column. So now, if I plug in a 0 for y, put a 0 here, means that term goes away and I'm left with negative 4x equals negative 38. Divide both sides by negative 4. I have to reduce and simplify. So negative divided by negative is a positive. Then you can divide the top and the bottom both by 2 and you end up with 19 over 2. That is your x-intercept. Now, to find my y-intercept, I'm going to plug in a 0 for the x term. So when I plug in a 0 for x times negative 4, well, that term's just 0, so we don't need it. And I'm left with y equals negative 38. I don't have to do any work here. I know what the y-intercept is. It is negative 38. And that's all there is to finding x and y-intercepts. Okay, I'll go ahead and end this one and be back with parallel and perpendicular.